My mother used to say that love is a house with one key. I learned too late that mine was forged from a blade. The invitation arrived with the family crest embossed in black, wax on unspoken command disguised as celebration. My father pretended. It was an honor. He didn't meet my eyes when he said it. "Wear the blue dress," he said, setting the envelope on the marble counter like it wasn't a verdict. "You look respectable in blue, respectable, not beautiful, not loved, respectable like a debt that finally stops calling your name." By nightfall, the Rossi Hotel burned with light. Crystal chandeliers scattered it like shattered stars over slower, older constellations. Men who shook hands like contracts, women who smiled with their mouths, never their eyes. My heels echoed across the black and white floor as if counting. Down I knew their names, old alliances, older vendettas. I knew because my father had taught me everything except how to escape. A hush ran through the room as he entered Domenico Rossi. He moved like the room belonged to him, and it did. Black suit, black tie, a face carved from restraint, the kind of handsome that wasn't pretty. It was a verdict, carefully reasoned, coldly delivered. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. Silence gathered around him like smoke. His gaze found me. My spine straightened on command, even before my father's hand pressed between my shoulder blades. I felt like a coin being fed into a machine. My skin prickled. I could feel the weight of the eyes, the whisper, "She's the daughter." The last asset, the final bargaining chip. Domenico stopped in front of us. My father bowed his head. I kept mine level. It was not bravery. It was a reflex born of a lifetime of swallowing words. "Signore Rossi," my father said. "My daughter, Eva." Domenico's eyes were a winter storm gray, watchful, full of distances no one survives crossing. He took my hand. His fingers were warm, his grip was light, but it felt like a cuff. He lifted my knuckles, paused, did not kiss them. Control performed in negative space. "Eva," he said. His voice was smoke. His silence was fire. I curtsied because my body had been trained to obey long before my mind knew it could refuse. He watched me, and I knew he was measuring things I couldn't name. "Dance with me," he said. It didn't sound like a request. The band picked up a waltz too slow to be innocent. His palm slid against my waist, and I felt the precise pressure. That guided me without forcing. Power at its most intimate. The choice that wasn't. The room blurred as we turned. Perfume, whiskey, mirrors. "Don't tremble. Don't beg." His breath brushed my temple. The scent of winter air followed him, clean and lethal. He didn't look at my mouth. He didn't need to. "You didn't want to come," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said, because lies always came back with teeth. "Good," he murmured. "I prefer honesty. It makes the remainder cleaner." The remainder of what?" I asked. Proud, my voice didn't break. He didn't answer. His thumb moved the smallest fraction against silk, cataloging what that touch controlled. My heart stumbled. "Your father owes," he said finally, as if it were weather. "He pays in daughters, in guarantees." His lashes lowered. "You'll do." Anger flared through fear, thin, bright, useless. "I am not a guarantee." His gaze lifted to mine. I realized why people followed him. There was no heat in it, no kindness, but there was belief. A man who knew what he was and suffered no illusions about the cost. "On the contrary," he said softly, "you are the only thing that might stop your father from dying." We turned again, passing a gilded mirror. For a breath, I saw us from the outside, a dangerous man and a girl, dressed as a promise. The sight made something old in me crack. Why me? I asked. You're untouched by their politics. Useful. His jaw tightened, a flicker of something like distaste at himself or the situation. I couldn't tell. And because I don't, like owing men like your father anything that breathes, so I will be a sealed ledger, a closed mouth, a signed line. How long? I whispered. He paused at the turn, and the world paused with him. The band thinned to a single violin until the war ends, he said. What war? The one your father pretended not to see coming. He guided me from the floor before the song ended, a breach of etiquette. No one stopped him. He led me through an archway to a balcony washed in winter. The city below held its breath. I stepped back, needing space that he allowed and still contained. Cold air bit my throat. I won't be obedient, I said. Lie. I won't be docile. I don't need docile, he said. I need loyal, to you, to what keeps you alive. You mean you, I said, and hated how true it sounded. He studied me like a puzzle with a cost. You can hate me later, he said. For now, you will go home with your father. You will pack. You will be ready tomorrow at dusk. Ready. For what? To leave, he said. To become my wife? The words scraped my lungs raw. I felt the balcony tilt. No, no, no. I won't marry a stranger, I said, knowing that strangers did less damage than men who knew your name. He took one step closer. The distance collapsed to heartbeat and breath. You will, he said, because I have enemies who like to make their points with daughters. And because your father doesn't get to sell you to the highest bidder, I am the only bidder. The violence of that tenderness rattled me more than a threat would have. That's not mercy, it's math, he said. We stood in the cold, measuring each other in breaths. My body hated me for shivering. He shrugged out of his jacket and placed it over my shoulders without touching my skin. The warmth shocked me. The sense-eater and winter closed around my throat. Why the jacket? I asked, hating that I asked. Because I don't share what's mine, he said simply. Not even with the cold. I'm not yours, I said, but the jacket gripped like a vow. He leaned in, and for a second I thought he would kiss me. Instead, his mouth paused a breath from my ear. Not yet, he said, and when it happens, you'll understand it was never a question. Rage and heat and terror braided into a single tight thing in my chest. I won't be a cage you lock. From the outside, I opened my mouth, but the door behind us swung wide. The noise of the room rushed back like a tide dot. My father stood there. His smile was a confession, Eva, he said. You and Signore Rossi, do you like the balcony? It's where your mother said yes. My mouth went dry. She said yes to you, I said. She said yes to survival, he corrected gently, as will you. Domenico's eyes flicked between us, and the air shifted. I realized they had already spoken. This dance, this balcony, this moment it had been arranged, like flowers on a grave. Tomorrow, Domenico told my father, without looking at him. Dusk, my father nodded, the relief in his shoulders a betrayal I felt in my bones. Domenico looked at me again. I will not come to collect you, he said. You will come to me. And if I don't? I asked. The silence that followed had teeth. Then I won't be the one who finds you, he said. He left first. The crowd swallowed him, the way the ocean takes a stone. My father reached for me, but I stepped back. The jacket slid, heavy as a decision. Home. I packed because rage doesn't change locks, and defiance doesn't fill passports. I folded the blue dress as if shrouding a body. I won't be obedient, I thought, but I will be alive sometimes. The first is a promise you keep to the second. I found my mother's rosary at the back of a drawer. The beads were smooth where her thumb had been. I pressed the cross to my mouth. Help me, I whispered, to God or to anyone listening. Help me find the door in the wall. Dusk arrived, dressed as a car with black windows. My father didn't look at me as he opened the door. Downstairs, Mrs. Marino from 2B clutched her grocery bags and pretended not to see Dot. The Rossi safe house sat on a hill above the river, a stone spine with steel for skin. Inside, the hush wasn't empty. It was curated. Men in dark suits moved. Like shadows trained to behave, they led me to a room with a window facing water and a wardrobe, already filled with dresses that knew my measurements. The thoughts snagged like barbed wire. How long has he been planning me? A knock at the door, not heavy, not timid. Enter, I said, because I didn't know if I was allowed to say no yet. A woman stepped in, late 30s, hair in a severe knot, eyes that had learned the cost of softness. She carried a velvet box and a thin envelope. I'm Alessia, she said, his housekeeper. A pause. His friend. Does he have those? I asked. She did not smile. When he can afford them. She set the box on the dresser, the envelope beside it. This is your ring, he said, to give it to you now, so you have time to decide whether you'll put it on yourself. Decide, I repeated. The word a bruise. I pressed just to feel pain. What happens if I decide not to? Then he will put it on for you, she said, and left before I could hate her for the honesty. I lifted the lid. Platinum, a single diamond that did not sparkle so much as flare clean, relentless light. It was not romantic. It was a statement. I can afford permanence. The envelope was heavier than paper should be. I slid out a single photograph. My lungs forgot how to work. It was me, in the blue dress, on the balcony. My face turned toward Domenico's shadow, vulnerable, defiant, caught on the back. In a precise hand, I protect what I claim. My anger found its voice claimed. I said aloud to the empty room, like land, like a city, like a war. My phone buzzed against the dresser. Unknown number, I answered before fear could coach me into silence. Eva, Domenico said. His voice over a line sounded the same as in a ballroom, steady-edged. Alessia brought you the ring. I'm not a shipment, I said. No, he agreed. You're the ship. What does that mean? I snapped. That if you turn, everything turns, he said. You're not a guarantee, Eva. You're a pivot. That's why I chose you. I hated the tremor. That word carried inside me. You will hate me for a while, he said, softer. Then you will learn the map. Then you will redraw it. The words landed where I didn't want them. Don't give me a future I haven't chosen. I gripped the ring until the metal bit. And what do you get? He didn't hesitate. Victory. And if I refuse? Silence stretched. I heard something faint on his end door. A breath, a quiet laugh without joy. Open your window, he said. I crossed the room and slid. The glass night air swallowed me whole. Below, at the edge of the trees, headlights glowed and went dark. A shape waited beside them, still as a verdict. I will not always be gentle, he said in my ear, but I will never be careless. Those are the same thing, I said, and didn't know if it was true. Look down, I did. The shape moved forward into the wash of a security light. The man held something small, too small. It took a breath before my vision resolved it. My father's watch, the old one, the one he never took off. It dripped. My throat closed. What did you do? I whispered. I told him to be on the plane by noon, Domenico said. He wasn't. A message was required. A pause. He's alive now, I said. because I knew how messages worked. Now, he agreed. The words slid like ice across my skin. Put on the ring, no. Then I'll come in. I stared at the silver circle caught between my fingers and the city beyond the glass that used to be mine. If I say yes, I betray myself. If I say no, I bury my father. The equation hurt. I slid the ring onto my finger. It clicked into place like a lock finding home. Good, Domenico said. I heard the breath he finally let go. Tomorrow we marry. Is this love? I asked, hating the tremble. No, he said. This is survival. And after that, he said, his voice dropping to something that warmed and wounded in equal measure. We'll teach each other other words. The line went dead. I looked at my hand, the metal, the light, the promise I didn't make. The door opened behind me without a knock. I turned, pulse stuttering, ready to tell Alessia I hated her honesty and needed it anyway. It wasn't Alessia. It was my mother alive, and she didn't look like a ghost. She looked like a warning. Take off. The ring, she whispered. He didn't choose you, Eva. I did. They say ghosts are cold. Whoever started that lie never saw my mother standing in my doorway, breathing, warm and wrong, in all the ways a resurrection should be right. The ring on my finger suddenly felt heavier, like it knew it wasn't the only thing with a claim on me anymore. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The door clicked shut behind her. You're alive. It came out as an accusation, not relief. Her eyes, the same green as mine, flicked to my hand. And he's already marked you. Marked, not married, not engaged. Marked like cattle. I swallowed hard. Where have you been? Hidden, protected, waiting for the day your father would finally cash you in. The words sliced the air between us. You knew. She didn't answer. Her silence was too practiced to be guiltless. You knew, I repeated, louder. And you didn't warn me. You wouldn't have believed me, she said. Each syllable weighed like gold she couldn't afford to lose. He's the kind of man you don't run from, Eva. You only run to him on your own terms. That's not a choice, I spat. That's surrender. No, her eyes sharpened. That's survival. The same word Domenico had used. Do they all read from the same scripture? I stepped back until my shoulder met the cold glass of the window. Why now? Why show yourself now? Because I chose you for him, she said, and the floor seemed to tilt under me. The room went silent except for the slow, deliberate beating of my heart. You chose me, yes. I know the Rossis. I know their enemies. I know their appetites. I felt the air thin. You offered me to him. Her expression didn't change. Better him than the men who would have taken you otherwise. At least with Domenico, you'll live. You might even learn to matter to him. I hated that part of me listened for the possibility inside that sentence. And my father, I asked. Your father is a fool who mistakes luck for strategy. He's been bleeding our family into debt for years. If the Rossis hadn't claimed you, someone else would have. Someone who would have carved you hollow for sport. Claimed, survive, live. The words were starting to feel like chains. My voice dropped to a whisper. You don't get to make that choice for me. She stepped closer, lowering hers to match. I already did, and you will thank me one day, if you live long enough. Before I could answer, the door opened. Domenico stood there. No knock, no preamble, just the sudden weight of him filling the doorway. His gaze moved from me to my mother and back, his expression unreadable but sharp enough to cut glass. Leave us, he said, not to her. To me, I bristled. It's my room. It's my house, he said, the softness of his tone making it more dangerous. I looked at my mother, her chin lifted in silent warning, the same look she used to give me when I was about to say something. I couldn't take back. I left. The door closed behind me, but it wasn't thick enough to block the silence on the other side. I waited in the hall, every second stretching like wire pulled too tight, when the door finally opened. My mother walked past without looking at me. Domenico stood there, one hand braced on the frame. His other hand reached up, almost absently, to touch the ring on my finger. "You'll keep this on," he said. I met his eyes. "What did you say to her?" His mouth curved, but it wasn't a smile. Enough. Enough for what? For her to understand she no longer decides what happens to you. The words should have felt like rescue. They didn't. "From now on," he continued, "you speak to me before anyone else. If I want you to know something, you'll know it. If I don't, you won't." "That's not protection," I said. "That's control." His eyes held mine, unblinking. Sometimes they're the same thing. I wanted to hate him in that moment for his certainty, for the calm in his voice that made defiance feel like drowning. But the truth was worse. A part of me believed him. Loyalty. It sounds clean until you see what it costs. I didn't sleep that night. Domenico's words kept pacing the inside of my head. "You speak to me before anyone else." Sometimes they're the same thing. By morning, the house was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty. It felt watched. I learned quickly that the walls had ears here, human ones, men I didn't know, dressed in black, stationed where they could see the door to my room without ever looking directly at it. Alessia appeared with breakfast, black coffee, bread, figs. No small talk. "Eat, he's waiting for you, waiting for me." My stomach nodded. Where? In the car. Outside, the day was pale and cold. Domenico stood by a sleek black sedan, speaking to one of his men. When he saw me, his gaze swept over me once, not in appreciation, not in judgment, in assessment, like I was an asset he needed to confirm was intact. "Get in," he said. We drove in silence through the city's gray arteries, out past the clean glass towers, into older streets where the air smelled of exhaust and salt from the docks. Finally, I asked, "Where are we going?" He didn't look at me. "To see if you can be trusted." My pulse jumped. Trusted to do what? We stopped in front of a warehouse, the kind that looked abandoned until you noticed the two men at the entrance, pretending not to stand guard. Inside, the air was colder, tasting of dust and old metal. A man sat in a chair at the center of the empty floor, his hands tied, his head bowed. His shirt was torn, dark with dried blood at the shoulder. Domenico walked toward him, slow and deliberate, like a judge approaching the bench. I stayed by the door. "This man," Domenico said, "fed information to people who would see me dead. He knew the risk. He took it anyway." The man lifted his head just enough for me to see his eyes, defiant, even now. "What does this have to do with me?" I asked. Domenico turned. His expression didn't change, but the space between us seemed to shrink. "You will decide if he leaves here breathing." The words hit like ice water. "Why me?" "Because loyalty isn't proven by words," he said. "It's proven by choices no one wants to make." I shook my head. "You're asking me to." "I'm not asking," he cut in. "If you belong here, you'll learn that loyalty isn't about comfort. It's about certainty." The man in the chair spoke then, his voice rough. "Don't do it. Whatever he's told you, don't be part of it. Be part of it." Domenico's gaze sharpened. "He wants you to believe you're separate from this world. You're not. You entered it the moment you put on my ring." "No," I thought. "I entered it the moment you decided I would. Why me? I asked again, my voice lower this time. Because, Domenico said, stepping closer until his shadow fell over me, if you can look him in the eye and decide, then I'll know you can be loyal to me when it matters. I looked at the man in the chair, then at Domenico. My chest felt too tight for breath. I don't even know what he did, I said. You don't need to, Domenico replied. You need to decide if my word is enough. The silence between us felt heavier than the cold air, and I realized that this wasn't about the man in the chair. This was about me, and whether I would obey without proof. I opened my mouth, but I didn't get the chance to speak. Domenico leaned in, close enough for his breath to warm my ear. This is your first lesson, Eva, he said softly. Loyalty means living with what you choose and what you lose. The sound of my heartbeat filled the space between us, and I understood whatever I said next. There was no going back. They say the worst prison is the one you build yourself. In that cold warehouse, Domenico handed me the blueprint. The man in the chair was breathing hard, his eyes locked on mine. Not pleading, not yet, but waiting to see which way the knife would turn. My throat felt dry. If I refuse, I asked. Domenico's gaze didn't flinch. Then I'll make the choice for you, and I'll know exactly what you are. The words landed heavy. And what am I? I forced my eyes back to the man. What's your name? He hesitated. Luca. Luca. What a sharp breath from Domenico. His name doesn't matter. It matters to me, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. If I'm supposed to decide whether he lives, I want to know who I'm condemning. Luca's mouth twitched into something like a smile. Doesn't change the truth. I crossed him. I'd do it again. That earned him a glance from Domenico. Cool, lethal, but almost respectful. I took a step closer, my heels clicking in the silence. Why? Luca's jaw flexed. Because power without conscience is just fear with better weapons. The words caught in my chest. Was he talking about Domenico? About me? Domenico moved toward us, his presence swallowing the space. Enough. Decide. My fingers curled into fists. You want loyalty. It's not blind. Something flickered in his eyes. Not approval, not anger. Something more dangerous. You think you can negotiate the terms. I think you already. No, my answer, I said, my voice low, the air stretched thin. Then, finally, he spoke. So be it. He stepped past me, leaned down, and murmured something in Luca's ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the way Luca's shoulders dropped, tension bleeding out. Domenico straightened and turned to me. He lives. For now. Relief hit fast and hot, and with it, the realization that the choice had never been mine. As we walked out, Domenico's hand brushed my lower back, a touch that felt both like possession and protection. You didn't fail, he said quietly. But remember, mercy is a currency. Spend it too freely, and it buys you nothing. I met his eyes, and what did today buy you? His mouth curved, faint and unreadable. A clearer view of who you are and how to use it. The ride back was silent, but not empty. I could feel him watching me in the glass reflection, not with suspicion, but with the patience of a man who plants a seed and knows exactly how long it will take to grow. By the time we reached the house, I understood something I hadn't. Before, Domenico didn't just want my loyalty, he wanted me to choose him, even if he had to control every choice I made. Weddings are supposed to smell like flowers. Mine smelled like smoke that hadn't risen yet. The Rossi estate was a fortress, dressed as a palace. Stone walls, wrought iron gates, guards in suits instead of uniforms. Inside, the air was heavy with lilies, roses, and the tension of people who wore smiles like armor. Alessia zipped the white silk gown up my back. It fit like it had been made for me, which meant it probably had been long before I agreed to wear it. "You're shaking," she said. "I'm not scared," I lied. She didn't answer. Her eyes in the mirror told me she didn't believe me. The doors to the courtyard opened, and the hum of conversation hit like a wave. Faces I didn't know, but names I'd heard whispered at my father's table, turned to look at me. Some smiled politely, others assessed, calculated, and then I saw him, Domenico, standing at the end of the aisle, dressed in black as if mourning something. His eyes locked on me the moment I stepped forward, and the rest of the crowd blurred away. His gaze didn't soften, it anchored. I walked toward him, the sound of my heels sharp against the stone path. My father was at my side, his grip light but insistent, a man delivering a package he couldn't afford to lose. When we reached the altar, Domenico extended his hand. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, just to remind myself I could. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in recognition. He liked the resistance. The officiant began, his voice formal, almost drowned by the wind threading through the courtyard. Every word felt heavier than it should, like it came with invisible clauses. "Do you, Eva Moretti, take Domenico Rossi?" My lips parted, but before I could answer, Domenico spoke. "She does." The officiant froze, glanced at him, then at me. I could feel every eye on us. "I speak for her," Domenico said, his voice calm but edged. "And she will speak for me when I allow it." A murmur rippled through the guests. My pulse kicked hard. "Say something. Push back." But I didn't. "Not yet." "I do," I said finally, my voice steady enough to pass for willing when it was his turn. Domenico's "I do" came without pause. The ring slid onto my finger, metal cool against my skin. His fingers lingered, just long enough to make the air between us shift. "You're mine now," he said, low enough for only me to hear, "in every room, in every shadow. Remember that." When he kissed me, it wasn't tender. It was ownership disguised as ceremony, slow, deliberate, and meant for the audience as much as for me. My heart pounded with something I refused to name. The applause was loud, but under it, I could still hear the sound of my own thoughts. If I'm his, it's only because I haven't figured out how to make him mine. The applause faded long before we reached the car. What stayed was the weight of his hand at the small of my back, not rough, not gentle, just there. A reminder. The drive back to the Rossi estate was silent. The city outside moved fast and free. Inside the car, everything was still. Even the air felt restrained when we pulled through the gates. The house was lit in gold, every window glowing like it was holding its breath. Alessia met us at the door. "Your room is ready." Your room, not your shared room. But Domenico didn't release me. He guided me upstairs, past hallways I hadn't learned yet, until we reached double doors at the end. Inside, the room was warm, quiet, and too large for one heartbeat. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto the night. The bed was a piece of art. All white linen in space, impossible to ignore. He closed the door behind us. The sound was louder than it should have been. "Is this where you tell me the rules?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He took off his jacket, laid it over the back of a chair, with the precision of a man who didn't leave loose ends. "You already know them." "I know what you told me," I said. "That's not the same as knowing you." His gaze cut to mine. "You think you want to know me?" "I think I should," I said, lifting my chin. He stepped closer, slow enough for me to feel the decision in every inch. "Knowing me means carrying pieces of me you can't put down." It means understanding why mercy looks like cruelty and why trust is rarer than love. I didn't look away. Then teach me. For a moment something flickered in his eyes, something not entirely cold. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from my face. His hand lingered at my jaw, his thumb just at the edge of my mouth. "You're not ready for that lesson," he said softly. "But you will be," my pulse stuttered. "And if I decide I don't want it, then you'll learn it anyway," he said. And there was no threat in it, only certainty. He stepped back, breaking the heat between us, and crossed to the window. "You'll sleep here tonight. The door stays unlocked. Not for you to leave, for me to enter." Why? His reflection in the glass didn't blink. Because I decide when the distance between us closes, not you. The air felt heavier. I couldn't tell if I wanted him closer or further away. When I finally lay down, the bed felt too wide. I watched the ceiling until my eyes closed. Somewhere in the dark, I heard the door open. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, stopping beside the bed. I didn't move. I didn't speak. A hand brushed the blanket near my shoulder, just enough to know I wasn't dreaming. And then his voice, low and certain. "Sleep, Eva. Tonight, you're safe. Tomorrow, we'll see." The door closed behind him, but the heat he left stayed until morning. By morning, the house was already awake. Footsteps in the halls. Low voices carrying names I didn't recognize, but would need to remember. Alessia came in without knocking. "You'll need to be ready in an hour. Domenico wants you with him today." "To where?" She hesitated. "The De Luca estate." I didn't know the name, but the way she said it made me feel like I should. "What for?" Her eyes flicked to mine in the mirror as she adjusted the collar of my dress. "To see if you can stand beside him without flinching." An hour later, I was in the back of the car again, seated next to Domenico. He didn't look at me, but his hand rested lightly on my knee, not affectionate, not exactly controlling. A signal. The De Luca estate was older than the Rossi one, its stones darker, its gates heavier. Inside, the air smelled faintly of wine and something sharper. He leaned in, close enough that his breath brushed my cheek. "Because the day you decide I'm your enemy, I'll have no choice but to become him." His words stayed in my head long after I left. Heat pricked behind my eyes. I blinked it back. "That's not a refusal." "No," he said. "It's not." I felt the floor tilt. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He stepped into my space, and I felt the heat of him, the steadiness. "I will not use you blind," he said. "And you will not betray me under the flag of good intentions." "I won't betray you," I said, "but I will save who I can." "You'll warn me first," he said. "I'll warn you first," I echoed, and heard what that vow cost me. The house exhaled, or maybe it was just me. He touched my jaw, the briefest press of thumb to skin. Not a claim, not an apology, a contact that said, "We are still in this place. Tomorrow," he said, "you'll sit in on the next council. You'll hear what I hear, and you'll decide if your keys are heavy enough." I swallowed, and tonight, he said, and for the first time since the ring slid onto my finger, something like warmth entered his voice. "You sleep with the door unlocked, not for me to enter, for you to leave if you decide to, and if I do," he didn't blink, "then I become what you decided I am." I stood there with my new weight of metal and truth and chose the only thing. That didn't feel like a lie. "I'm not leaving," I said. "Good," he answered, but it wasn't triumph. It was relief dressed in restraint. He moved past me, toward the hall, toward whatever reckoning waited with a woman named Alessia, and a war that had just changed its shape. At the threshold, he paused. "Eva," I lifted my chin. "Yes, when I kiss you next," he said. "It won't be a threat." The door clicked. I was alone with the keys and the consequences. The council chamber smelled of smoke and expensive fear. 8 men sat around the oval table, each with a different reason to want the others dead. Domenico sat at the head, hands flat on polished wood. I sat to his right, keys in my pocket, pulse steady only because I willed it. Alessia stood at the far end, beside a man I didn't know, slim build, eyes sharp enough to cut. Domenico didn't acknowledge her, but his gaze flicked there once, just once. "This meeting," he began, "is to decide how we handle the Moretti leak." My hand tightened around the pen in front of me. Leak, that was a polite word for betrayal. One of the older men, Santoro, leaned forward. "We already know who fed them the roots, do we?" Domenico asked, his tone casual enough to make the room shift. "Go on." Santoro's eyes slid toward Alessia. The room went still. Alessia didn't flinch. Domenico tilted his head. "Why?" "She's been moving between rooms she doesn't belong in. She had access to shipment logs, and she was planted." Bianca's voice interrupted from the doorway. She stepped inside like she owned the floor. 2 guards behind her, who apparently didn't care she wasn't supposed to be here. "She was planted," Bianca repeated, "but not for the Morettis." She looked straight at me. "She's yours, Alessia." Lips curved just enough. "I told you, survival from the inside." Domenico's eyes narrowed. "Who's inside?" "Yours," Alessia said, "and hers." The table murmured low and sharp. Domenico held up a hand. "Explain." Alessia's voice was steady. "I gave the Morettis enough to keep them away from Eva. I fed them false roots, false dates. Every real shipment they thought they were hitting was empty. They thought they were bleeding you. I was bleeding them." Domenico's jaw worked once. "You played both sides. I played my side," she said. "And my side was keeping her alive long enough to learn how to keep herself alive." All eyes shifted to me. My fingers were cold, but my voice wasn't. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" "No," Alessia said simply. "Because if you knew, you'd tell him. And if he knew, he'd shut me down." The silence was deep enough to drown in. Domenico leaned back. "You risked my business for her safety." "Yes," Alessia said. "And you," he turned to me. "What do you say to that?" I looked between them, the 2 people who'd played their own games with my life like I was worth the wager. "I say, she saved me. But she didn't give me the choice to decide how." Alessia's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Domenico's didn't. He stood. "This ends now. No more double lines. No more private games. And if I refuse," Alessia asked, "then I decide what side you're really on," he said. The words hung in the air like smoke. That night the house was too quiet. Domenico came to my room without knocking. He closed the door, stood against it like he was keeping the world out. "You have your keys," he said. "Use them. Decide who stays, who goes. You're giving me that power," I asked. "I'm giving you the weight," he replied. I thought of Alessia's steadiness, of the way she'd stood in that room with every gun pointed at her name and not flinched. I thought of Bianca's smirk when the bolt slid open. I thought of Domenico's hand, heavy on the table as he decided which truths were worth speaking. "Alessia stays," I said. He nodded once. No argument, no approval, just acceptance. "And Bianca?" he asked. "She's already gone," I said. "But you knew that." His mouth curved faintly. "Yes," I stepped closer. "Then there's one more thing. This marriage, it's not a shield if I don't hold it to. I'm not your pawn, Domenico. I'm your partner or I'm nothing. He studied me for a long time. Partner, he said finally, as if the word tasted strange, then act like it. I said. He reached for me, not like a threat, not like a claim, but like an answer, and for the first time I didn't flinch. The kiss wasn't punishment. It wasn't victory. It was a contract signed in silence. When he pulled back, his voice was low. From this point, you don't leave my side. I shook my head. From this point, we don't leave each other's. He smiled, not cold, not cruel, dangerous still, but different. Done. Epilogue. 6 months later, the sea was quiet that morning. We stood on the balcony of a Villa Domenico swore he didn't own, which meant it was ours. The war was over, or as over as wars in our world ever get. Alessia poured coffee without asking. She'd earned her place and mine. Bianca sent a letter, Domenico said, holding it out. I took it. Inside was a single sentence. You opened the right door. For now, I folded it, tucked it away. She's not done. Neither are we, he said. I looked at him, the man who'd once been my cage, and was now the only thing between me and the kind of freedom that could kill me. Then let's start the next game, I said. He smiled and the sun caught on. The edge of it, my queen, and that was how it ended. Not with escape, not with surrender, but with the two of us on the same side of the board, knowing the game never really ends.